Hello, Anna.
Hey there, how are you?
I am doing well. Do you want to introduce yourself with your name and pronouns?
Uh, my name is Anna. We'll cut off the last, she, hers.
Hmm.
And I am the transgender hockey player from, was that like a month or two ago?
Oh, damn. All right. Yeah. Hey, welcome back to the channel. Yeah. All right. Chill. How's it going?
Good, good. I was just like, I thought it might be a good idea. It might be, well, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And then I thought it might be a cool idea. So, like, my day job is as an executive assistant in finance.
Oh,
Um,
damn.
And given with the GME thing, I thought like maybe like this would be a good opportunity to answer any questions you might have.
Hmm.
I'm
Okay. So, I don't know as much about stocks. I'm trying to learn a little bit. Let me hear. All right. So, let me ask you a little bit because maybe this could be good and informative for the community. So can you give like a little bit of a summary, at least from the position that you are aware of the situation leading up to, let's say, like a couple days ago, like when things were at the height of their zaniness, when the line was going up. Like, can you describe the events as they were leading up to there?
Yeah. So, generally speaking, what it seems like to me, I stumbled on Wall Street Bets like a month ago, something
Okay.
to that effect, and I followed it because I was thinking, someone should probably pay attention to these people.
Yeah,
um,
seems like a good idea.
um, But they struck me honestly as a bunch of LARPers, for lack of a better word.
Oh, really?
People, yeah, people who carried the aesthetic of like being a big Wall Street person, but like acted like no Wall Street person I've ever met.
Don't actually know what they're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, by and large.
Okay.
And so initially I remember seeing a report of the GameStop thing, and I thought it was kind of funny, like in an ironic sense, because it going up, because I was like, that's interesting. And as the stock went up and went up, and and it wasn't the only stock that went up. There were
Hmm.
others that actually our company ended up making like a bunch of money from because we
Sure.
just happen to have them anyways for different reasons.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so what ended up happening is it seems like there was a massive sort of whatever the algorithm is on Reddit seemed to drive everybody in the direction of Wall Street Bets.
Hmm.
And it seemed like the moderators were intentionally hyping it up.
Oh, really?
What is generally called, oh, it may not quite apply here, but it's generally called a pump and dump scheme.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
the reason for that is the idea is like, so like a traditional pump and dump scheme would be that, let's say I have $1 billion fund, I buy $1 million of GameStop, then I put all of my money into GameStop,
Hmm.
all $1 billion I'm managing of other people's money. The stock goes up a ton. I sell my stock, then I sell their stock afterwards, and they'll
And they're left
gain.
holding the bag.
Yeah, yeah, essentially. So, but this feels to me as like a new form of crowdsourced pump and dumping.
Really?
And yeah, and then social media creators jumped on it. Both sides of the aisle I actually saw it. It wasn't just lefties or
Hmm.
conservatives, or like defeat the system. And
Right. No, I definitely noticed that. I was talking to my brother the other day. To me, it was like different forms of populism. Because, right and left populism both generally dislike elites, right? That's kind of inherent to the nature of populism. It just depends on what you define as elites. On the people on the left will define elites as people who own like massive amounts of capital, billionaires, people on Wall Street, so on and so forth. And then the right will define elites with several brackets. If you catch my drift, right? It's the Jewish cabal. It's the people. It's the corporations, but not because they have money, but rather because they have an LGBT inclusive ad once out of the year.
yeah,
It's very different kinds of populism, but ultimately it ends up, like it ends up with people hating the same groups. You know, it's like they still hate
Yeah.
corporations. It's just for very different reasons.
Well, and something else I noticed was as I was well, first of all, I like knew very early on that like everybody investing after the initial stock went up was going to lose their shirts. Um,
Mm,
but because there's something referred to as value investing, and I don't know the exact equations to it, but basically there is what's referred to as a rational price, which is a stock should be a certain price relative to how much the dividends pay out, which is basically, for those who aren't familiar, when you have a share of a stock, based on whatever that share is, it may pay out X amount of money. Sometimes it's monthly, sometimes it's quarterly, it just depends.
mm,
And when I was talking to my boss about it, he's like, yeah, the rational valuation of this stock is $20. And, there's no reason it's going to stay high.
sure.
So we ended up getting out of the adjacent stocks like it because basically it went up like crazy and it was an irrational price, so to speak. Um, and yeah, so also something else I noticed mentioned quite a bit was people talking about like, oh, there are insiders who are talking about this stuff. And like in my experience, insider trading is pretty rare.
Really.
And and the reason for that is because usually by the time you hear the information, it's already irrelevant.
Mm,
Like it's already been priced in. So I don't know. I don't really believe there was this big conspiracy amongst Wall Street bankers. I think generally speaking, what happened is people who were in the positions anyways and benefited from it saw it shot up, knew it was an unreasonable price, and got out while, everybody else just stayed on the hype train.
mm-hmm. Yeah, what was it? It was like it was like the hands and the diamonds that basically was a signal to not sell even if the stock starts going down, because you have to hold, right? You got to hold. And unfortunately it seems like what happened was um a lot of people ended up losing a lot of money. Especially
Yeah.
people who started buying in when the stock was already very high and it had nowhere to go except for down. Um, because I mean, like logically, and if you want the line to keep going up, people have to keep buying it. But the line going up means that the price is going to keep going up. So eventually, people are going to be paying a lot of money to keep that line going up.
And I do wonder if the moderators of Wall Street Bets are going to go to jail. Because, like,
Interesting.
what they did was objectively illegal.
Mm,
Um, by hyping the prices, by deleting posts talking about like it seems like what they're doing is they're actively manipulating the conversation to keep the price rising. But like that's market manipulation. The SEC has incredibly broad authority. I mean, like I'm not even involved in like finance making decisions, but due to my proximity to people who do, I'm under constant surveillance. All my accounts have to be reported. What I can invest in is very, very regulated. So, like, it's just if they're doing this, I just don't see how people don't go to jail over this.
yeah. Well, I mean, I can at least tell you a little bit. Again, disclaimer: law student, not lawyer, etc., etc. See description. Um, I mean, it's a tough situation because like there's usually a couple things that come into account. I don't know the exact law in the situation, but as far as being able to prosecute someone, right? First, you need to be able to show with first you need to be able to have enough evidence to be able to know as a prosecutor that you actually have a case that you can be able to push through trial. What that means is you need to be able to pretty reasonably know that you're going to be able to meet your burdens for whatever the law is that you're going for, like whatever statute or law that you're going to be bringing the claim under. But also you need to be able to have enough evidence to be able to prove your claim in trial, right? So even if like a really good example that I always use is the example of larceny. Larceny just being like usually like it's another way of saying theft, right? Larceny being theft. Now, technically, at least in Maryland under common law, if you go into a shop, this is always the hypothetical that's brought up. If you go into a shop and you go and you walk over to like a shirt and you pick up that shirt with the intention of stealing it, that is larceny. Technically, if it can be proved in court, then you can go to jail for picking up that shirt. Now, most people in those situations can, like a lot of people will pick up shirts so they'll pick it up and they'll look at it and then they'll put it back down and they'll go on their day. And so it's impossible to tell when someone picks up a shirt if they're committing larceny. That is not a problem of the claim itself. That's a problem of being able to prove it, right? Like all the elements are there. You have, God, I haven't gone through all, you have someone picking up the shirt with the intention of stealing it, right? To abridge it without getting into all the details of it, right? But being able to prove that in court is an entirely different issue. And so here, my main concern, I mean, it's very similar to the issue of the Capitol Hill riots, right? The attempted coup. It's like you clearly have a lot of people who are obviously breaking the law, but how are you going to prove that for every single individual person in court? You'll be able to get some people, sure. Some people will be caught on camera and you'll be able to properly identify them, especially the people who take on like a more affirmative role. But like for this, we're talking about anonymous online accounts. Maybe it can be retrieved. Maybe enough identifiable information can be retrieved through Reddit to be able to build a good case against people. But I just think it's going to be really hard in concept, That's basically like where my brain is going right now as I'm thinking about this, because I think I agree that it seems like it's definitely illegal.
Possibly, but the thing about financial crimes
Hmm.
is that the lack of evidence is in and of itself a crime. That's what makes them so hard to get away with.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that you had like really intense record keeping. So anybody who made a fortune off of this, I mean, it's going to be disclosed to the SEC. It's, and for what it's worth, I do think that because the laws that make this illegal date back to the Great Depression. I mean, this is the sort of behavior that literally set off the stock market crisis. This is why it took to the 80s for them to loosen restrictions. And honestly, I'm not positive if that was for the better. But and the restrictions were not loosened that much. But I think at minimum, you're gonna see the SEC basically requiring Reddit to go through some excruciating compliance requirement that may cause them to just shut down any related subreddits to investing in general because they're just you need to protect ordinary investors, so to speak. I was telling my girlfriend, who is also actually a law student,
Oh,
I
cool.
was like, yeah, it was like it's like you got 100 courses at the racetrack, and only one person in every 100 knows how to ride a horse. So it's very easy to take advantage of ordinary people in that situation, and that's why the SEC and FINRA exists to protect people from those who might abuse them.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that makes sense. The thing that sucks about this though, because I mean, like, I do really care about like people who are not like for everyone to be able to access these kind of markets, like my biggest worry is that these are the kind of markets that are effectively inaccessible by people who come from like middle or lower class backgrounds because they don't have enough capital or know how to be able to invest in them. And so it really sucks because this seems like a decent resource to be able to learn how to invest. Like, I mean, I've been trying to learn how to invest for a while and it just is super fucking hard. And so it sucks because like essentially it's gate kept. I mean, like just like a lot of things in our society, like it's something which is gate kept behind effectively a paywall because you have to be able to acquire the knowledge to be able to take advantage of those things. And usually how you acquire that knowledge is by paying for it. It's very similar to like the legal system, Like a lot of people who have a lot of wealth are able to afford good lawyers who can tell them how to be able to, for example, allocate their wealth for property purposes and be able to maximize their wealth and investment in that way. Or be able to afford the best lawyer in court. If you commit a
Yeah,
crime, you don't have to settle for that crappy public defender. You can afford the good shit. And so just by virtue of having a lot of money, you're going to be more likely to get off the hook, which is terrible. And so while I get that, this may be necessary to make sure that small investors are protected, it also sucks because it seems like one of the best ways for small investors to be able to get like access to a community where they can like learn how to be able to invest more.
Yeah, we'll see. I 100% agree. And for what it's worth, I will, totally cede my ignorance, so to speak, and that I've been in the sort of quote unquote high end world of finance for a little bit now. And the people I see on a day to day basis are the rich people who can afford the wonderful investment advisors. So, like, totally, totally grant that. But I mean, there are ways to invest, and I'm not a registered rep, so like I can't, like, in the same way that you can't give legal advice on here, I can't give financial advice.
Sure.
But there are a lot of safe and easy ways to invest that are good for beginners. Just find a local financial advisor, start put, and if nothing else, just start putting money into your retirement accounts. For those of you who have 401ks, if you don't have access to that, get a Roth IRA,
Hmm.
and just find an advisor to put you into something safe, sustainable that will grow over time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do you have any thoughts about how this is gonna affect people going forward, like the fallout with r/WallStreetBets and all of that?
I suspect this will be precedent setting in terms of how internet discourse occurs around the stock market.
Sure.
That you will, unless the SEC steps in, which, as I've said, I think they should,
Hmm.
um, that you're going to have a pattern of hype. Stock goes up like crazy, a handful of people get rich, and you're going to have what is essentially, because at the end of the day, what did the GameStop thing do for the majority of people? Largely, it was people taking like their retirement checks, or not their retirement checks, sorry, their stimulus checks. There we go, and they were funneling it into this to pump up the price. And what you essentially had was you had all that money that we racked up on the debt with the government to try to stimulate the economy has been siphoned out and sent to the pockets of people who spend 24/7 working on the stock market, who, you know, JP Morgan, for example, has entire teams of financial analysts to figure out how to get the best price. They have, the cutting edge these days are computer programs that, literally will be able to predict, movements and how things happen, and using AI.
Hmm.
One thing I actually think will happen is that those same programs will be able to predict how the Reddit or the Facebook or the wherever algorithms go.
Hmm.
We'll be able to predict roughly when those stocks will peak, and they'll be able to sell, just based on the patterns of how social media move. Because I suspect it's very predictable, given that this is an organism, given that this sort of event requires a preset of kind of social media movements that are all dictated by a fixed algorithm.
Interesting.
No.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, it's great to be able to have someone on here who has like a decent authoritative background on this, because I certainly do not. That's one of the main reasons I've tried to not talk about this, is because obviously everyone has been, but I feel very uncomfortable talking about things that I don't know about, or if I do talk about it from a kind of perspective that I can actually have some kind of authority on. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And I really appreciate your channel. As someone who grew up with very few trans people in the public eye of any kind, I really appreciate you and people like you's other content creators who are trans, being visible and, relatable figures for younger people because, we both know it wasn't there when we were younger.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I trust me, I get that. It's kind of weird to think about that because I don't know. Well, I mean, like, obviously, I'm aware that there's not a lot of like larger trans content creators online. There's certainly like a decent amount, but it's very hard to get to be a larger trans content creator online. And I always think about why that is. I think that there is like an inherent kind of barrier to relatability for people who come from minority backgrounds, just in general. Because unfortunately, culture being such as it is, it's um, I don't know. There's a lot of people in society who do not kind of get what we're about, and it sucks. But I'm glad that we're able to kind of like carve out this space online where we have a community of people who are actually able to not only understand us, but where we're able to understand like other people from similarly marginalized backgrounds. So uh
Yeah.
yeah, I appreciate it.
And for what it's worth, the professional hockey team that me and my friend were starting,
Hmm.
it's gone very, very well.
Really, that's awesome.
Yeah, like beyond my wildest expectations since then. So I don't want to share any information at risk of doxing myself
Hmm.
when it's still in such a fragile state
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
because it's
totally.
so. But
um
I'm really hoping that eventually I'll be able to come on here and promote it.
Yeah, totally. And hey, whenever it does, yeah, like come back and we'll talk about it again. That's awesome. I'm super happy for you.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks.
All right, I'll talk to you later. All right,
All right, for sure.
bye.